This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, morning everyone, and welcome to the second BBA workshop of 2020 hosted by SPRA and LRWA. The aim of today is to get our members up to speed on some key topics that we are facing relating to certification, CE marking, UKCA marking and UKNI marking. Just want to take, if you haven't attended one of our meetings recently, just want to take you through how they're run virtually. We won't do any introductions, but you can see who is on the call. So if you click on the people icon, you'll see it's quite a big group today. So we'll see how the technology holds up. But yeah, if we have to, we might have to ask you to turn your cameras off other than the people speaking, but we'll see how we get on. Everyone will be muted but the host to avoid background noise, but you can unmute yourself if you do want to talk. But what we do want to ask is that if you have any questions, that you put them on the speech bubble. Can you see the speech bubble control? Because then we will keep an eye on the questions, and we've got an open panel session towards the end of the presentation. So we will put all your questions to the BBA, but anybody that submitted questions early, these will be addressed in the presentation. Okay. So just to let you know, today's meeting will be recorded, is being recorded. So we will, just to let you know, we will be making that available, hopefully. Okay, so just a reminder, we're a trade association, so we are ruled by competition law. This is a slide we put up at all our meetings. So if you believe or you feel that discussions are becoming forbidden under competition law, then you can obviously raise an objection and we can shut down the meeting. Okay, so introduction to the team leading the meeting. If you don't know me, my name's Sarah. I'm the CEO of the Liquid Roofing and Waterproofing Association, and my co-host today is Ronan Brunson from the Single Ply Roofing Association, who is also the CEO. Just wanted to say that in September, guidance came out from the government giving us more information on the CPR and how things will likely change post-Brexit. I think it's safe to say that things are not 100% clear at the moment, but we have asked our colleagues at the BBA to help us address the concerns of our members and to try and pick apart the issues. And the people that are leading the session today from the BBA are Hardy Geisler, who is the CEO, John Alban, Chief Scientific Officer, and Claire Azelwood, who will be taking the question and answer part of the presentation, which is who is a quality manager and the company secretary. Okay, so the agenda for today, Hardy's going to give an introduction from the BBA. We've got an overview of the CPR and how we got to the current position from John. Actions that manufacturers need to take, your questions answered by Claire. We've got the open Q&A panel session that Ronan's actually going to be hosting. And we've got the summary and close. And I just want to say now that the slides will be available on the LRWA and SPRA members area, so you don't need to be furiously taking photos as we go along. Okay, I will hand over to Hardy.
Thank you, Sarah. Quick sound check. Oh, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. Well, good morning, Sarah, Ronan, and colleagues from LRWA, from SPRA, and also a few from the BBA. At the BBA, we have a new ethos. We are here to support our clients, to underpin your successes, and to go the extra mile for you. We understand that there is no conflict between setting the highest technical standards and providing excellent client care. And we are working hard to make sure our new ethos becomes visible in everything we do. As you would imagine, delivering such a new ethos requires new ways of working throughout your organization. It requires new systems and processes, so that when we make a commitment, we do so with the absolute confidence that delivery is assured. We want you, our clients, to feel that you are special and that we care about your success, helping you to bring new products to market in predictable timescales. And if possible, make all of this happen more quickly too. Time, as they say, is money for all of us. With more than 50 years of technical know-how and expertise at hand, we would like to share more and make our information more readily accessible. We want the BBA to be more relevant and to be a trusted partner across the construction industry. We would like the BBA to be your first port of call for product testing, assessment, and certification requirements. Trade associations are, of course, a very valuable route to market for us. And as far as trade associations go, I can't imagine having a better working relationship than those that we have with the LRWA and with SPRA. Our first joint workshop was held in January of this year, my first month in a new role, and I'm pleased to say that SPRA and LRWA members treated me kindly, whilst also sending a clear message regarding the urgency for change and the scale of change required. We have listened and we're working at pace to address your concerns. Some of the headlines of changes already delivered or in the process of being delivered are a 25% increase in product assessment and certification capacity, increasing our presence in the Northwest with a new office in Liverpool and further regional expansion likely, setting up a client engagement team that will focus entirely on scheduling work and communication with clients, significant strengthening of the leadership team, and driving a culture of change within the BBA, setting up a client-first culture. Sarah was also the first to visit us in our new offices in Liverpool, an office that actually represents construction in the 21st century, which is not what we would claim with our Watford office. I hope that in due course we will be able to host events such as this one in our new offices in Liverpool. And now onto something that is creating great uncertainty for many of us. The impact of Brexit and associated matters such as CE and UKCA marking is causing some sleepless nights in many a company. The BBA would like to help you. We may not have all the answers as yet. I don't think anybody does, but we will do our very best to find out and share our knowledge with you. We trust that you will find the BBA's role in this, both today and going forward, helpful and supportive. And with that, I would like to hand over to two colleagues that have invested significant time to understand the Brexit challenges and the opportunities in greater detail, John Alban and Claire Azelwood. Over to John.
Thank you, Hardy. First test, let's see if the technology works. That's not gone well, Sarah, so far. Ah, there we go. Yes, I'm currently head of the BBA's Technical Excellence Department, and I'm fortunate to have Claire Azelwood working with me as part of that team. Those of you that know me, which I'm pleased to say is quite a few of you, I think, wouldn't be not surprised to learn that I'm taking the easy option on this presentation and I'm doing the first part. Claire will be stepping up to look at the questions and where we're going forward as part of the second part of our presentation. I think both of our presentations do need to come with a form of health warning. Nothing is certain with Brexit at the moment. Even some of the most basic questions remain to be finalised and answered. We've done our best trawling all the various resources available to us to come up with the position as we believe it to be. But in some cases that has required an amount of interpretation, and a lot of this is still subject to change. So please bear with us. This is the best we can do. And we'll start with an overview of where we are now and how we've got to this position. So the Construction Products Directive started all of this off really back in 1989 with the intention of providing a passport across Europe for construction products, whereby a single specification could be declared and enable the products to be placed on the markets throughout the EU. At the time, it was put together as a directive, which for legal reasons required UK government intervention and legislation for it to become UK law, and the UK being the UK with regard to Europe, we decided not to do that. So the CPD was always a voluntary directive. This changed in July 2013 with the introduction of the Construction Products Regulation, and the key part of that title is the regulation, which meant that no UK government intervention was required in order to put that into UK law. So the CPR in July 2013 became mandatory. Now there are two routes to CE marking. There are a harmonised European standard and a European assessment document. Of the two, the harmonised European standard or European norms is mandatory. If a product is covered by a HEN, then you are required to CE mark your product when placing it on the European market. Now, a harmonised standard is a European standard for which a defined scope has been given by the EU and which contains an Annex ZA. That annex defines the degree of intervention by a third-party conformity organisation such as the BBA. You are also required, as I'm sure you're all aware, to produce a declaration of performance on the basis of the essential characteristics defined in that European standard. So we thought we'd give a few examples of products relevant to our two partner organisations today that are covered by mandatory CE marking as a result of harmonised European standards. So the products shown on this slide are examples, but by no means exclusive, of the sort of things we're talking about for mandatory CE marking. The second and perhaps slightly more complex route is a voluntary route through a European assessment document, which in turn leads to an ETA. This is voluntary. You can do it if you choose to, and in order to do so, because there is no harmonised standard in place, it's necessary for a technical assessment body, or TAB, and apologies, there is no two ways around all of these abbreviations and titles, a TAB such as the BBA, in association with our European colleagues on an organisation called EOTA, to draw up a European assessment document, or EAD. When these were precursed by a previous system under the CPD for European technical assessment documents, or ETAGs, some of which remain in use but are progressively being replaced by EADs. So there's a subtlety to this. EADs, like a harmonised standard, define the work to be done before we can publish an ETA. They also contain an Annex ZA that gives you the attestation level required. Similarly with harmonised standards, however, once you have an ETA for your product, this no longer becomes a voluntary CE marking exercise. If you have an ETA, you must CE mark your product. It becomes a mandatory system. So as for the harmonised standard, we thought it would be useful to put a couple of examples up. Liquid applied roof waterproofing, for example, not being covered by a harmonised norm, can be CE marked by going against an EAD or previously via an ETAG. I briefly mentioned their attestation levels. I'm living in the past because that's what they were called under the CPD. Under the CPR, these have the catchy title of Verification and Constancy of Performance, or for goodness sake, let's abbreviate it, AVCP. The extent of third-party interaction in the process is set out within the CPR, and you'll be pleased to hear I'm not going to put up a copy of the CPR for your digestion, but it's contained within Annex 5 of the CPR. And basically, in simple terms, it sets out the degree of intervention for a certification body such as the BBA. Clearly, other certification bodies are available, but what we need to do in this respect is it defines how much work the certification body needs to carry out in order for you to be able to CE mark the product. It's basically arranged around the EU's interpretation of how safety critical the product is. So for a product that has a significant structural implication, or where fire is of significance, it's likely to be higher up the scale. Something with less significance from a safety perspective will be lower down. It ranges from System 1+, which is the highest level and therefore involves the greatest amount of participation by a certification body, down to System 4, which, as you'd expect, is the lowest level. Now, this is a very busy slide and probably quite difficult to read, and you'll be relieved to hear I'm not going to take you through it line by line. As Sarah said, these presentations will be available to you should you choose to look at them later, but it basically sets out the degree of participation and the responsibilities for both the product certification body or notified body and the manufacturer. So as an example, for System 1 Plus, the BBA would be responsible for taking regular audit samples of the product and retesting them as part of the ongoing surveillance over the CE marking arrangements. For System 4, in complete contrast, we would have absolutely no participation in your CE marking of a System 4 product. I think most of the products of interest to the participants on this seminar would be somewhere between the two. So Claire's going to get into great detail about some of these, but this again is a bit of a busy slide. But as part of UKCA marking and UKNI marking, which I will come on to in a minute, the UK government is going to put a parallel situation in place to the CPR. It's very much going to be based around the existing CPR arrangements, and for the various aspects of that under CE marking, and equivalents will be put in place by UK government. So again, not to go through this line by line, but in place of the CPR, or in parallel, I should say, with the CPR, we'll have a UK CPR, which will pass into UK law at the beginning of next year. Similarly, for existing harmonised European standards, equivalent UK designated standards will be put in place. And this follows all the way through the existing CE marking process, so that we will have a parallel equivalent UK process to the existing CE marking activity. So I'm convinced you are all aware of UKCA marking, but just to talk you through at a very high level what this involves, as far as we can, because it's still developing. The first details of this were issued in early 2019. Since then, there is an element of making this up as we go along, I think, but more and more details are gradually being released. UKNI was sprung upon us relatively recently, which is, again, a parallel arrangement where UKCA will apply across Great Britain, England, Wales and Scotland. UKNI will apply within Northern Ireland, where there are obvious complications with the Irish border we all know about and probably don't want to get into as part of this particular presentation. The majority of the information in this presentation has been put together since the latest details on this were published at the beginning of September. But as I've said, more and more information is continuing to be released to us. So I'm briefly going to run through the timelines for the three markings that will continue to be relevant. UKCA, as I've explained, is relevant to Great Britain. It will become mandatory for all products that are applicable, i.e. all products currently covered by CE marking, from the 1st of January 2022. It will become available a year earlier, from 1st of January 2021, and importantly, it will be mandatory for new products from 1st of January 2021. So we have a year's grace for existing CE marked products, but that will not be the case for any new products you intend placing on the market from January next year. Whereas for CE marking, there has been a requirement to have tasks carried out by a notified body, and by tasks that could be testing and or inspection activities. For the UKCA mark, these activities must be carried out by a UK approved body. This is fairly straightforward because existing notified bodies under the CPR will be designated as UK approved bodies by UK government in time for the 1st of January deadline, and the BBA will clearly be one of these approved bodies, both for testing and for inspection. UKNI is an identical timescale, exactly the same thing, but this is applicable only to the Northern Ireland market, and Claire will be dealing with this in a bit more detail in the second half of this presentation. Of course, we can't forget, much as we'd like to, we can't forget about CE marking, because this continues to be applicable should you wish to export your products into the European Union going forward. If they are currently required to be CE marked, they will continue to require to be CE marked. And in this situation, the BBA, as a UK approved body, cannot carry out the inspection activities that are required going forward, as we do at the moment for CE marking. If you wish to continue to CE mark your product, you must have the conformity task carried out by an EU approved body. As I've said, government is continuing to issue guidance around this in order to allow you to affix the UK recognised approved body and UKCE/NI marking by the 1st of January 2022. Again, if you choose to do so, you are able to do this by 1st of January 2021. And again, if you have new products, it is mandatory to use it for applicable products for the 1st of January 2021. Should you, at some point, either this year or next, decide to use UKCA/UK/NI marking, any third-party conformity assessment defined by the standard or the EAD must be carried out by a UK approved body. And the final important aspect I'm going to cover is that bear in mind that CE marking will continue to be recognised for an additional year for existing CE marked products. So for products covered by that, you have a year's grace until 1st of January 2022 to put the necessary arrangements in place. That is a very quick run through of where we are and how we've got there. There is a lot of guidance available, and we provided a link to you at the bottom of this slide for the current UK guidance. As Sarah said, these slides will be made available to you at the end of this process, so you'll be able to pick that up should you choose to do so. So that concludes my remarks. I'm going to pass you across to Claire now, who's going to pick up on the questions that have been placed to the BBA via the two associations in advance of this seminar. If there are other questions, as Sarah said, we're more than happy to pick those up at the end of Claire's presentation. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. So my first comment is, sorry, my first comment is that not everything is changing, and I know it sounds obvious, but we are quite often asked about this. Many of our products, so many of you have Agremont certificates, that is unaffected. It's completely outside of the CPR regime. So Agremont certification remains the same, its recognition remains the same. The same is true of our regular accredited testing and inspection activities. They're covered by UKCA, which is still a signatory to all of the international mutual recognition schemes. So the only things affected are the CPR activities. So UKCA marking. The reason it's so complicated is that what you need to do depends on so many factors. So the nation that you're based in and the markets you sell into, whether you're using a harmonized standard route or an ETA, what your AVCP level is, whether you currently have your third-party conformity tasks carried out by UK or EU body, where your ETA was issued, whether it's an existing product or a new product, whether it's changed. So you end up, once you multiply up all these factors, most people end up being in slightly different situations, but I've tried to cover what I can. I've snuck in a couple of extra questions that weren't actually asked beforehand because I felt that they were naturally going to come up. The UKCA marking rules are covered by the construction products regulation that's been adopted as the UK CPR. On the 1st of January 2021, the construction products amendments regulations come in, and that's most of it is to change EU or CE with the letters UK, but there are some other updates. But what you should read the amended version as being is the section at the bottom: the UK marking shall be affixed visibly, legibly and indelibly to the construction product or to a label attached to it. Where this is not possible or not warranted on account of the nature of the product, it shall be affixed to the packaging or to the accompanying documents. So that's the physical rule for the UKCA marking. So there were a number of questions that came in on practical elements of UKCA marking. So does it have to be on the roll of membrane or on its wrapping? And again, it should be on the product unless the size or nature of the product makes this impossible. For some products, there is a transitional period written in until January 2023, where UKCA marking doesn't apply, doesn't need to be done in quite the same way. But for construction products, because the CPR already covers how it should be marked and already allows indirect application, so it already allows application of the mark to packaging or documentation, that transitional period does not apply, so already covered. Can it just be mentioned on a relevant page of the website? No. Slightly tricky issue: can a product destined to the UK have both the CE mark and the UKCA mark? And I've added the UKNI mark alongside each other. And yes, potentially a product could require all three marks if it's to be sold in all three parts of the EU. Sorry, in all three of the EU, including Republic of Ireland and GB and Northern Ireland. The Construction Products Association dealt with this as well, and they've actually suggested that the marks are positioned quite separately to avoid confusion. But one of the government examples of the logo has them next to each other. There's also a potential of combining CE and UKNI, so there are different combinations depending on where you're selling and where you're making. One of the items of debate over this issue is that the CPR itself, in Article 4.2 about the Declaration of Performance, and then Article 8.3, that says that CE mark only marked to attest conformity with the essential characteristics declared on the DOP against the harmonised standard or against the ETA, the EAD. The reason why this doesn't conflict, having multiple marks doesn't conflict, is that we aren't, in doing UKCA marking, we aren't making declarations against the harmonised standard or the EAD. We're making those declarations against the UK designated standard, and that's okay. You can make a declaration against a different system. You just can't make more than one type of declaration against the harmonised standard. So the consensus is that there therefore isn't a conflict between the marks, and people point out that we often have imports with multiple conformity labels on them. You think of the US, for example, will often have underwriters' laboratories marks as well as CE marking. So for those who manufacture in the UK and sell the same product to the EU, Northern Ireland and the UK in regards to what marking we could use and whether we have to have different notified bodies for the CE and UKCA marks. So yes, in this situation, you could end up having all three of the marks. So CE for Ireland, UKNI for Northern Ireland, and UKCA for the GB market. UKNI and UKCA marks require that third-party assessment activities are carried out by a UK approval body, and CA marking assessment activities need to be carried out by an EU approval body. What we're hoping is that wherever possible, we're going to be able to work with the EU bodies so that you're not having to double up on activities. So, for example, we have some people where we're hoping to be able to carry out a single inspection to represent, which would be accepted by both bodies. I added this because it's how is the situation different for companies based in Northern Ireland? The fact that Northern Ireland was going to be different was first covered by a special set of rules, and that was in the withdrawal agreement from last autumn. It set up the Northern Ireland Protocol, and that was where the UKNI mark was first mentioned, although we didn't get details about it until this summer, really. The companies who are based in Northern Ireland are in the unique position that they can actually choose whether they CE mark or UKCA mark. And there's also the potential that a UK approval body could actually mark a Northern Ireland product with the CE UKNI combined mark. Now, we had hoped that by now we'd have further details. There was some information expected in mid-October. It hasn't come out yet, but as soon as we have further information, we can share it. I know that some of the members of these groups are based in Northern Ireland, and we will update our information for Northern Ireland as soon as we have it. But it is very, very confusing. The permutations for Northern Ireland are particularly difficult. Will the BBA keep the same notified body number, was asked. Originally, the UK government had said that they intended for us to keep the same number. They've now said that we will keep the same number. So we're 0836. We're not absolutely sure what the exact syntax will be. We think it'll be UK NB 0836 or NB UK 0836, but we're not certain yet. As soon as we get confirmation of what the exact syntax is, we will of course let everybody know in case you need to update labels or packaging. We're going to have the equivalent, the NANDO database is where all of the European notified bodies and tabs have their notification scopes. We are going to disappear from the NANDO database, which is hosted at Europa, but we will then simultaneously appear on the UK version of the database. We're supposed to be getting information on the new system and a new authorization before the end of December, so that the new system can come into place 1st of January 2021. We will be transferring both as a UK notified body and as a UK technical assessment body. Somebody asked, will the UK version of the CPR be up and running by the end of 2020? Yes, essentially the legislation is already in place. So the CPR UK is adopted as a regulation, and then that amendment bill that I mentioned earlier, that will come into force. It's been through both houses, it's ready to go. It comes into force on the 1st of January, and that's the one that changes the current CPR into the UK version with the various edits on the way through. If a harmonised standard changes, will the UK automatically follow the changes in the UK designated standards? No. I've made a comment. I mean, everybody understands the convenience and the sense in keeping the standards parallel as much as possible. But it is likely that EU and UK standards will diverge. We're expecting that the UK will still be involved with CEN and CENELEC and with inputting standards to the EU. But it is likely, particularly with building safety changes, I think we are going to see some divergence. Okay, a couple of people said we have ETAs with the BBA. Will the BBA automatically transfer and reissue those, or do we have to ask? Will there be a cost? Do we end up with 2 certificates? So the first thing is, if you need to continue to sell on the UK market, you do not have to transfer your ETA into a UKTA. The government have, at one point we thought you might have to, but the government have now advised that existing certificates from UK bodies will be treated as if they were issued under the new UK framework. So you could just take your existing ETA and that will support your UKCA marking. If you wish the BBA to reissue the certificate under the UK notified body number at some point, or under the new system, that's fine. That can be done, but you don't have to do it. The main thing is that for sales to the EU market, for CE marking, you will need to have your ETA copied across to an EU tab by the end of 2021. So what we're intending to do, we're going to give the trade negotiations another week or two, because again, it could be changed depending on what happens in the negotiations. But we'll then be contacting all of our BBA ETA holders during November, probably mid-November, to find out whether they want to convert their ETA to a UKTA, whether they want to transfer or duplicate the technical files to our EU partner tab, or whether they want to do both, or whether they want to do neither. And this decision really is going to depend on what markets you sell into, whether you wish to voluntarily CE or UKCA mark in both markets, and whether you want to have an updated UK certificate. So that'll be a fairly simple question. You'll be emailed, you'll be asked the question, you get back to us, and we'll then kick the process off as necessary. So if you do want your ETA reissued, then we'd expect at the moment that it would only be a nominal fee just to cover the administrative costs of reissuing it. We are expecting that to be pretty much a paper exercise. That's the basis on which we're saying that. If you want it to have an ETA from an EU tab, then we've got arrangements in place. You'd end up being in a contractual arrangement between the EU tab and your company and the BBA as well. So what we would do is prepare your technical file and the evaluation report. We'd copy that across to the EU tab. They'll then check and review it and reissue. So it's not a full assessment because we've already done it. They will just check that they're happy with the file. If you are selling in both markets, then you will end up with 2 certificates, one from each tab. Similarly, we have FPC certificates with the BBA. How will these be handled? Again, we'll be contacting all FPC certificate holders during November, and we'll be asked whether you need UKCA marking on an ongoing basis, whether you need CE marking on an ongoing basis, or whether you need both. If you only need UKCA marking, again, as with the ETAs, you can use your existing FPC certification to support your UKCA marking. So it doesn't need to be reissued. If you do want it reissued with the UK notified body number, then again, this can be done for just an administrative fee. If you only need, if you only need CE marking, again, we've got a contract with an EU notified body who will accept our previous FPC audits and reissue your FPC certificates under their own notified body status. And if you need both, then essentially we do the 2 actions above. So the UKCA will be covered by your BBA FPC certificate, either as it is or reissued. And our EU notified body partner will issue a new FPC certificate under their own name. So again, you could end up with 2 FPC certificates. In some cases, in many cases, we're hoping that we'll be able to, again, just have the 1 FPC visit accepted by both bodies. We currently have CE marking through an EU notified body. I've added all tab. Can the BBA carry out the conformity assessment tasks to support UKCA marking? Yes, so we're going to be both a UK technical assessment body, equivalent to a tab, and under that we can issue UKTAs for a wide range of construction products, and we'll also be a UK notified body, so equivalent to the current NB, and that will be for product certification, System 2+ FPC and System 3 testing. So obviously get in touch with us if you need any of those services to get your UKCA marking. Can we have clarification on what new responsibilities distributors, as opposed to manufacturers or merchants, of EU imported goods will have? And I'm afraid it's not my area, I've just taken the guidance straight from the link. Essentially, the main difference is the distributors will now be classified as importers, mostly, bringing in products to the GB from a third country. So there are changes and obligations. You've got to take more responsibility for the products and for ensuring that the assessment and AVCP requirements have been carried out, that the correct conformity marking is on there, that the labelling is correct. And continuing that all economic operators need to get advice just to make sure that they understand. And again, it's one of those situations where it's going to depend exactly what your situation is. And you do have a year to get this in place, because CE marking in the UK market will continue to be valid throughout 2021 for products that were already CE marked. So you've got a little bit of time to set up exactly what your requirements are, but you do have additional requirements that you didn't have before. If though it's a new product being placed on the market, so it's one that was not CE marked by the end of 2020 and it's being placed on the GB market for the first time, then you have to go straight to UKCA marking. So CE marking won't be recognised during 2021 for new products on the market. This question, for clarification, to continue to CE mark, we need do nothing. I've put another link up that you can check out later, but the important sentence from that link is, if you've already placed your goods on the market in an EU country or in the UK before the 1st of January 2021, you do not need to do anything. For products already placed on the market, CE marking will continue to be recognised in the UK market for 1 year. For new products or newly marked products, UKCA marking will be needed immediately, just to repeat what I said before. We had a couple of more specific questions about what's going to be required for CA under different VCP systems. We are that. Sorry, I was just except that who carries out the third-party conformity tasks, it's a UK notified body rather than a EU notified body. Other than who carries those out, the system's essentially the same. And although not everything is going to stay the same in terms of in the future, they'll maintain the general of the CPR. I think that's what we're expecting. Much longer question and an answer here. Where a UK notified body has carried out tasks or issued certification in relation to the assessment or verification of performance for a product before. Sorry, I don't know why I'm dropping out. But basically, if a UK notified body has carried out the AVCP this year or before the end of this year, can that approval be used to support a mark? Yes. Nice big slide. And that's because it's quite a difficult area. Will carried out by a UK notified body that was EU notified at the time of testing still be accepted in support of CE marking by an EU notified body? Now, this question was raised with us because on our website with the update, we did note that although this was our interpretation, it was a contentious area that not everybody agreed and there wasn't full consensus. So I'm explaining that in our website update, we've tried to be as transparent as possible. As John said at the beginning, a lot of this is unknown, it's undecided, it could still change, and many times we're needing to work on word of mouth rather than definitive information. So the logic is that if you were notified at the time, there's no reason why your testing should not still be valid. In the same way that if we remove a test standard from our accreditation schedule, testing that was done while we were accredited is still accredited testing. But we know, and we know that there are many other notified bodies around Europe who agree with that and would likewise expect us to accept their tests. But we know that there are other bodies who have said the opposite, that actually no, from January 1st, UK testing reports won't be accepted. MHCLG was certainly claiming that notified work would continue to be mutually acceptable. They said that in emails from some time back. And we also know that both the UK and the EU wish to minimise duplication of effort and costs by the manufacturers. They don't think that companies having to retest everything is either sensible or proportionate. I've spoken to the Construction Products Association about this as well. They raised it as an area of concern in a recent webinar, and they've raised it again since then with the UK government. They will raise it again. They still haven't had a definitive answer. The BBA has also asked the government about it. As soon as we have any new information, we will share it. We continue to put what we think is the fairest or the fairest consensus that we learn, but I'm afraid we don't have a clear answer to this, and not for long. There will be time and capacity issues on both sides of the channel if there isn't a mutual recognition for existing reports. Is there an equivalent to EOTA under the new system? At the moment, no, there isn't, but it is under discussion. The BBA has been asked to stay as an observer on EOTA, which we've agreed to. We would actually prefer to be more fully involved still, and we've said that. We've also engaged with MHCLG about this, about getting an equivalent to EOTA set up. There's also a UK notified bodies group that will be set up as well. Will EU and UK notified bodies cooperate? They should. I mean, as I said before, there are differences of opinion among EU bodies and in different UK bodies, but essentially, yes, they will cooperate. What the government says in their guidance is that EU notified bodies are required to share information with UK approved bodies when requested by a certificate holder, and UK approved bodies should do the same with EU notified bodies. This will help facilitate the issue of new certificates of conformity where needed without the need to repeat the entire certification process. And I think that's an important point to remember, that nobody wants anybody to spend more time and money and effort than they need to get sensible marking of and conformity of their products in place. I think that might be my last one. Yes. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Claire. My name is Ronan Brunton, and I'm co-hosting the event with Sarah, as Sarah mentioned earlier. So now what we're going to do is we're going to have an open question and answer session, an open panel session. And to participate in this, if you haven't already done so, would you please put your questions into the speech bubble, which is located in the top band of your screen on the right-hand side. We've had a few questions come in already, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read them to Claire, who will either answer them or pass on to one of her colleagues in the BBA. So we'll try and make this as straightforward as possible for Claire. And as I say, anybody who's got any questions, please feel free to post them on our chat bubble. First question coming in is from Steve Henshaw, and it's concerning the Channel Islands and Isle of Man. The question is, will UKCA marking apply in these areas, Claire?
It is expected that they will, but at the moment we don't have rules specifically. The only territory we have specific rules for is Northern Ireland. It's expected they will follow something similar, but they do work under a different framework. So not just Channel Islands and Isle of Man, but even other territories in Gibraltar, and it is. But but it is something that people are aware of. I think they just haven't finished filling in the information for those territories. So we'll update you as soon as we know.
Okay, thanks, Claire. Next question is from Richard Zammit. Will ETAs issued by a UK tab prior to the 31st of December 2020 continue to be valid after the 1st of January 2021?
That's a very timely question. They will continue to be valid, of course, for UKCA marking. For CE marking, it's another undefined area. I had a discussion with CPA again yesterday and today. We think they may not be. CPA think they will be, as long as the product and the standards don't change. We think that the problem might be that if we're no longer an EU notified body, then how could we properly monitor the non-conformances and make any potential changes to those approvals? So to be decided. We're actually going to be looking into it today, having spoken to the CPA about it to get their impression, because they think that they will still be valid. So if I can, I'd like to deal with that one. I'm going to be later today actually investigating this in a bit more detail, and I can write it up and it can go out perhaps with the a written answer with this presentation when it's circulated. Is that okay, Ronan?
Okay. Yes, that's fine, Claire. I think it's
Richard Zammit here. Is it possible to have a follow-up on that, Ronan?
Yes, of course, Richard, please.
Okay, so just to put a bit more context on that, we are a UK, well, my organisation has both a UK NB and tab and an EU NB and tab. However, we were, without naming anybody, we were approached late last week from a UK tab to say they now believe that all of their, and this is hundreds and hundreds of ETAs, they believe all of their UK ETAs will cease to be valid in the EU on the 1st of January. So obviously that's come as a shock to them, because IOTA themselves had ruled on this back in March, that as ETAs were issued by the individual tab, at the point that they're issued as a snapshot in time, they're valid. So they would only cease to be valid at the point that a change is required. But I take Claire's point about the surveillance activity being needed. But I think it's still very confusing, because to change hundreds and hundreds of ETAs at this late stage is very difficult, I think, or to do the transfer. So if there is any clarification, that would be great. Thanks very much. Thank you.
No, that's fine, and I absolutely understand it. It's we had originally thought that they would continue to be, you know, as you said, IOTA had already discussed it. We originally thought they'd continue validity. Then we started seeing or hearing technical difficulties to achieve that. And then with CPA still thinking that they will continue validity, the last email I had was just about half an hour before this started. So I am going to go and have a much better look into it, see if I can pin down some proper evidence one way or the other. So thank you, Richard.
Yes, Richard, thank you. And thank you, Claire, for, you know, attempting to answer that question. Clearly, there's more information to come on that particular issue, but it clearly is, again, very important. Next question we've got is from Paul Thomas. And Paul is asking a question concerning the UKNI mark. Assuming that, and he's assuming that we can use the UK approved bodies to obtain that mark, I presume, because there'll not be enough or many bodies in Northern Ireland.
Yeah, that's right. Any UK body assessing a Northern Ireland product for the Northern Ireland market can issue that mark, can issue the documentation to support it. So yeah, not just Northern Ireland bodies, the whole of the UK.
Thanks again, Claire. Next question from Mike Wilson. will the BBA be testing and assessing on behalf of an EU tab?
Yes, we've got a number of, I mean, obviously we've worked closely with EU tabs for many, many years. And we've been approached by several of them who have clients who are going to want have UKCA marking and will be coming through us.
Okay. Claire, the next question we've got is from Andrew. Sorry, I don't have Andrew's second name, but products manufactured and packaged in 2020 with a CE mark, but due to poor sales, not sold into the UK market until 2022. Will these products need to be repackaged with UKCA marking before leaving the manufacturing site?
Is this for sale within the UK still? Okay.
Not sold in the UK market. Yes, again,
Okay.
selling back into the UK market, but not sold until 2022.
I've read this somewhere and I can't remember the response. I think I don't think they have to be repackaged, but if you don't mind, I'm going to go. I know the document is in, but I don't have it with me. So if you don't mind, I will one and confirm it in writing. But my understanding is that as far as the UK is concerned, as long as it's manufactured, the mark at the time of manufacture should be okay. But I will double check it and confirm to you afterwards.
Okay, thanks, Claire. Next question we've got for you is from Mark Gertel. Does the BBA have adequate capacity to deal with the volume of correspondence planned for November and the subsequent execution of data transfers to EU partner organisations?
Yes, the correspondence is already planned. The data transfers should be okay. We have a meeting tomorrow across the whole management team and all the departments to discuss exactly who does what and when, to make sure that we've got the resources in place.
Okay. Next question is from Kevin Wheeler. Will any notified bodies in Europe be able to be UK approved, or do the UK approved bodies need to be based in the UK?
The UK approved bodies need to be based in the UK.
Okay, so that's a pretty definitive
Yeah.
situation. Next question is from Jason Martin. Will tests carried out in a lab in EU member state be acceptable for UKCA?
Well, this kind of goes back to the slide about the reverse situation, which is UK notified body testing being acceptable in the EU. And it's a big issue. We don't know the answer. We don't know whether neither will be acceptable. We don't know whether they'll be mutually acceptable, or we don't know whether it'll be unilateral so that the UK accepts them, but the EU doesn't. From our perspective, we are expecting, as BBA, we are expecting to be willing to accept EU notified body testing, as long as the standards are the same. But again, it's this big area where we're trying very hard to get definitive answers still. Do you have anything to add to that, John?
No, I think it's a case of watch this space, unfortunately. As Claire's already said, we are seeking clarification from both government departments involved and coordinating ourselves with people like, well, people we're talking to today and the CPA. As soon as clarity is available to us, we will be passing it on. But at the moment, I'm afraid it's just confused.
Okay, thank you. Next question we have is from Maniki Dirks, and it concerns when is a product considered to be a new product on the market and therefore UKCA marked as from January 2021, which I think is one you've already covered.
Yeah, sort of, but there's more I can say. It's a really good question because the European Commission has used a slightly different definition to everybody else on this. The two phrases used are, one is when a product is placed on the market, and the other is when a product is made available on the market. Now, these go back to Article 2, I think, of the CPR, which gives definitions. And Article 2 of the CPR has that a product being placed on the market is the first time it was placed on the market. So if CE marked, it's the first time the CE marked product was placed on the market. And then a product being made available on the market is when it's a specific item is up for sale, or either free or in exchange for money. So it's the actual transactional part. These definitions have been used also in the withdrawal agreement between the EU and the UK, and in the government guidance that we've already provided the links for. So they use the same definitions, that if it's already placed on the, that's the first time it was on the market, and therefore it can continue. The EC, however, in the Commission, in their documentation, have taken a different approach, and they've said that placing on the market, to their minds, means being available for sale on the market, and therefore it would be each individual unit needs to be placed on the market by a certain date, rather than the product in its CE marked state. So it is a happy, well, yes, an unhappy situation, because again, we've got conflicting information. Now, the bulk of the information is that if it's already on the market, as in it has already once been introduced to the market, that would therefore continue until the product or the standard changes. But again, it's an area where the Commission seems to be digging its heels in and taking a contrary.
Yeah. Okay. Manix asks another question, Claire, and it concerns the BBA. Does BBA revise all certificates because of new numbers for the harmonized European norms, or does the BSI keep the same numbers?
I'll let.
Thanks, Claire. Yeah, I'm assuming Marnix means BBA agreement certificates in this case.
Yeah.
Assuming that is the case, the BBA certificate is, as we all know, an independent statement of fitness for purpose. The adequacy of the product for a defined application is not going to change as a result of changing a standard number. And so our default position would be that we would update certificates at the next review and reissue of the certificate. We wouldn't impose additional cost on our certificate holders to revise the certificates purely to update harmonized standard numbers or prefixes. Having said that, if individual clients feel it's important that their certificate should reflect the current standards, we'd be more than happy to do that for them.
And I'll just add that the British standards are keeping the same. They are keeping the same numbers for the that will change. So the standards will be clear what they are. I think we also felt that at the time of the assessment, those were the standards. The harmonized European standards, for example, are the standards that the product was assessed against. And it's therefore appropriate to keep that on the record until we next update.
Okay. Richard has a couple of follow-up questions, Richard Zammit. In the future, when UK standards may deviate from SEN harmonized European norms, will this be done through BSI standards? That's the first question. Second part to it, though, will this mean new British standards with new standard numbers? A little bit linked to the last question. For example, an EN number 3956 for single ply membranes. Would there be a new British standard issued with a new number if UK wishes to deviate from EN 13956?
No, the BSEN may end up being different to the EN. But they are at the moment intending to keep the same numbers, so it would just be an update to the UK designated standard. But yes, it will be handled through BSI, but they won't necessarily make the same changes.
Could I do a follow up on that as well, please, if possible?
Yes, please.
So I just use the example of EN 13956 because I'm familiar with that for CE marking of single ply. So if I understand correctly, then BSEN. So the question I have, I suppose, is would CEN or would the EU have any problem in a BSEN 13956 being out there, which will deviate from the true EN 13956, if I phrase it that way? So would the, maybe not CEN, but would EU have a problem of potentially confusing the market with an EN 13956 and a BS EN 13956 that could, in theory, be substantially different?
Yeah, they might have a problem with it. I'm not sure there's much they could do about it. If it's causing confusion in the industry, it's possible that the UK or BSI could decide to use new numbers, but I think it makes sense to keep them in parallel where they can. They are still going to be involved in CEN and CENELEC, so we're not going to completely divorce ourselves from that system. And I think if we're developing changes to standards or new standards, we'd expect still to be feeding through the European system, as other third countries do. But yeah, I can see it could get confusing.
Okay, thanks, Claire. A question again from Mark Gattrell. What will happen to any ongoing ETA contracts that the BBA cannot deliver before 1st of January 2021? Can work in progress be transferred to EU partner organisations?
The guidance for contracts that are in progress is that they can be completed as if they had been completed before the end of this year. So it would be a choice, really. I mean, it would probably make sense to complete it and then transfer the completed file. John, do you have anything to add on that?
No, I think you're right. But the most cost-effective and efficient process would be to enable us to finish the work we'd started and liaise with our partner organisation in Europe to ensure an immediate and effective transfer under their publication.
Okay, thanks, John, for that as well. Question from Mike Bradbury. If a product is assessed to a harmonised standard, but that standard changes in EU, will the UKCA marked product continue to the old standard, or will the UK automatically follow the changes of the EN standard?
For UKCA marking, the UKCA marked product will continue to whatever the current UK designated standard is. So if the EU version of the standard changes and the UK version doesn't, then the UKCA marking stays the same.
Okay, thank you. Question from Kevin Lay. Many companies are budgeting at this time of the year. Are there fee schedules available yet from BBA and other UK notified bodies for UKCA and UKNI marking? Fee schedule question.
Giving that one to John.
Yes, we understand it's a difficult situation, trying to set budgets against things that have not been decided. We can certainly give guidance costs, yes, but those costs are obviously caveated by the fact that a lot of this still remains outside of our control. And if there are significant changes made by UK government or the EU, we may have to revisit things, but we have a very good idea of what's involved in these processes now, and we can give what we think would be confident figures for you to budget for your schedules for next year.
Okay, thanks, John. A question in from Martin Holloway. Where there is no harmonised standard, i.e. with just an EAD, CE marking is voluntary in the UK. Will this still be the case with the UKCA mark?
Yeah, we think so. They're expecting to have UK assessment documents drawn up, UK ADs, which would be the basis for a UK technical assessment. in order to support UKCA marking on a voluntary basis. And the UKD is allowed to be based on an EAD as long as strictly EOTA have to give permission. But as we're still involved with the EOTA, we're not expecting that to be a particular problem. Do you know anything further on that, John?
No, I think you've covered that.
Okay, thanks. Another question from Richard Zammit. If a trade deal is reached between EU and the UK, could this impact what has been said today? Are we assuming a no deal in today's discussion? That's the question.
No, it's a good question, very fair. When BAYS and MHCRG first started putting out information about the changes, it was very much this is what will happen in a no deal scenario. But this summer they started, and particularly August and the beginning of September, the tone very much changed and it became this is what will happen regardless of the scenario. I think that if there is still if a trade deal is reached, I think they could back off a bit. I think it could be that we have much more mutual recognition or something like that. So it might. Sorry, it's muted me again. It might dilute the requirements somewhat if there's a trade deal reached, but I think they're still going to follow this general direction. So I think it will be heading in this direction. It could be that we have less rigorous, less stringent rules, but I think it will be heading somewhat in this direction. But you know, we've been very conscious that we don't want people investing time and money into something that might, you know, disappear in 4 weeks' time. But we'll see. As John said, and I think Sarah said, it's very much the whole lot is covered with a health warning that we, you know, there's many things we don't know and many things that could still change either before the end of the year or if a trade deal is reached indeed into next year.
Thanks, Claire. I've got a couple of questions listed from Jack Mumford, but I can't see them. Jack's saying, I've posted a couple of questions to organise on it. Sorry, Sarah.
I can see it. Do you want me to read them?
Yes, please, if you could. I can't see them.
Okay, first question from Jack. If we have a CE marking via an EU notified body, do we still need to affix UK NI mark as well as the UKCA mark? Is Claire still there?
Claire, can you hear us?
Could you repeat that?
Sorry,
I can hear you.
Yeah, if we have a CE marking via an EU notified body, do we still need to affix UK NI mark as well as UKCA mark?
I'm not sure. Hang on. Can you go on to the next question? John will answer it, and meanwhile I'll look that up.
Yeah. We've got a question from Richard Aldred. What defines a new product? Will formulation tweaks be considered a new product? That's a good question.
I suppose it would really depend on if a rule of thumb might be the declaration of performance. If you are making changes that affect your declaration of performance, that would constitute a new product. If you are making minor formulation changes, perhaps for cost effectiveness, that do not affect the performance of the product, I would say that does not constitute a new product, but that is very much my personal interpretation.
Okay. Another one from Jack. The last I heard from BBA, you are still waiting for some approval from UKAS to start carrying out UK assessment for UKCA. Is this correct?
No.
No, that's not the case. We would continue to be covered by our existing accreditation stroke notification arrangements. These would be automatically transferred to allow us to carry out the same functions as a UK approved body on a UK notified body. I'm going to pass you back to Claire now, because I think Claire may have an answer to your previous question.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll start with a follow-up to that one about UKAS. You don't actually, although we don't get the formal designation yet, they've said you don't have to start, you can start doing UKCA conformity assessments now. You don't have to wait for the end of the year if you don't want to. We just don't have the notified body number. Yeah, the other question, if you have an EU notified body and you're selling in Northern Ireland, you only need CE marking, which will continue to be acceptable in Northern Ireland only.
Okay. Thanks, Claire. Is that all the questions you have on that side, Sarah?
That's all. Yeah, all the questions direct to the organizer. There's one last question. Can you say it from Andrew? Yeah,
I can see it from Andrew again. And Claire, if you are selling to the 3 territories or 3 markets, CE, UKCA and UKNI, and there is a harmonized standard that has a UK version that differs from the UK version, will the manufacturing site need to test to both standards?
Potentially, if the essential characteristics are different, if the requirements are different. I'd be surprised if it changed so much that a product's essential characteristics that need to be declared would change, even if there's an additional requirement put in for something. I wouldn't have thought you'd have to test twice.
Okay, thanks. And finally, last question I have on this side from Mark Gartrell again. Just to clarify an earlier question, will ETA-related contracts completed by the BBA after the 1st of January 2021 be valid for transfer to EU partner organisations, given that the BBA will no longer be considered an EU notified body / tab at the point of completion?
Yes, we think so. Yeah, the guidance on conformity assessment that's not complete would suggest that was the case. And the partner we're working with is happy to accept our assessments.
Okay. And finally, one question from Marnix again, Marnix Sterks. Do you have drafts available for the UKCA and UKNI declarations?
I have seen some online. We can dig out a couple of links for you. They're going to look pretty much the same as the current ones, but just what you might find, the government has actually said that they're happy to have a single DOP, even if you have both UKCA and CE marking. That could become increasingly difficult if the standards do diverge, but obviously at the moment it would be fine. And in that situation, you'd include the notified body details both for your UK and your EU bodies. But I think that probably the best is I have seen a couple of suggested drafts, so I'll find a link that we can send out.
Thanks, Claire. One other question just popped up from John Lee. For product manufactured in UK and exporting to the EU, currently CE marked under UK notified body, is the deadline for notified body transfer set to be the end of the year? Just wants to confirm that point. In other words, product won't be able to be sold in the EU market until they are certified by an EU notified body after January 1st.
This comes back to the issue of what placed on the market means. If it's the withdrawal agreement and CPR definition, where you have already placed it on the market because it's already currently CE marked and being sold in the EU, then our understanding is that it will continue to be valid as a CE marked. Obviously, it depends a little bit on your AVCP as well, because if you've got ongoing surveillance or audit testing or anything like that, then that will need to be done by an EU notified body to maintain your validity.
Okay, thanks, Claire. And basically that ends the question and answering section that we have. And thanks both to you and John for attempting to give as full and a complete answer as possible to the questions raised by members. I think there's probably a couple that you might be able to get back to us on in the not too distant future. And again, that would be great. But just to recap where we've been today in this workshop presentation, John started off in the technical content and in his presentation gave us an overview of the CPR and reminded us how we got to this position. The Construction Products Regulations replaced the Construction Products Directive in 2013 with the intention to promote consistent product standards in the EU. Compliance with the CPR is mandatory, which is the key point here going forward. He also touched on the 2 routes to CE marking, considering harmonized European standards, which is CE marking is mandatory for, and also the second route, a European assessment document, voluntary, leading to an ETA if achieved, and if achieved, CPA marking would be mandatory. John also gave us some information on the AVCP, the assessment of verification and constancy of performance, touching on the 5 different levels, the level 1 plus the highest and level 4 being the lowest. He went on to cover the changes in terms of product marking from the 1st of January 2021, and hard to believe, but that's only 9 weeks or so away from now. And included in that gave the requirements of the new UKCA mark mandatory for new applicable products placed on the market in Great Britain from the 1st of January 2021, and mandatory for all products new and existing from the 1st of January 2022. The specifics of the UK Northern Ireland mark, or UKNI mark for Northern Ireland, were also discussed by John. Again, this mark is mandatory for new applicable products from the 1st of January next year and applies to all applicable products from the 1st of January 2022. CE mandatory for all applicable products placed on the EU market as well. Again, just to reiterate that point. Preparation must be made for the end of the recognition of the CE mark in GB and affixing UK marking using a UK recognised approved body by the 1st of January 2022. For UK marking, any third-party conformity assessment must be undertaken by a UK approved body. Existing CE marking will be recognised until the 1st of January 2022. In her presentation, Claire responded directly to members' questions in relation to actions that manufacturers need to take. Claire discussed the impact on BBA agreement certification. She also gave guidance on the route to follow to achieve UKCA marking and the rules that need to be followed, which are covered by the adopted CPR and the Construction Products Amendment EU Exit Regulations 2019. Claire went on to answer specifically, as far as possible, the questions posed by members of both associations, and these related to how the relevant marks were to be affixed and displayed. A number of questions were answered relating to the practicalities of required marking and the differences for manufacturers based in GB and Northern Ireland, as well as some of the issues for European manufactured products. Claire answered questions concerning both harmonised standards and how BBA will contact BBA ETA holders in November regarding whether they wish to convert their current ETA to a UKTA and how to go about this. She discussed the issue of factory production control certification and how these will be handled. Claire also answered questions relating to the assessment and verification of constancy and performance, AVCP, and what will be required for UKCA in terms of marking. Finally, Claire dealt with issues around testing carried out by EU and UK notified body. That ended the technical content of this workshop concerning matters pertaining to BBA certification, UKCA and CE marking. So hopefully this workshop has been informative for all who attended, and thank you for doing so. Representatives from the BBA have been willing to answer questions on the issues raised by our joint members in an attempt to provide better guidance and some degree of clarity. The BBA also hope to come back on any unanswered questions as soon as possible. We would be pleased to attempt to address any further questions by sending in the first instance to either SPRA or LRWA. So finally, on behalf of Sarah and myself, representing our respective organisations, the SPRA and LRWA, I would like to thank Hardy and his senior management team at the BBA, including John and Claire, for their participation this morning at this unique event, and of course all our joint members for taking the time to raise these important issues with us and the BBA. So looking forward to future similar events, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. This workshop is now finished, and many thanks for your participation. Thank you.